Ready?
Not so easy.
Hi, I'm Larry Waddell, founder of Prism+spire,
And I'm Alyshia-Madlem.
and we're here to bring you more Prism Perspectives. And today we're going to talk about something that impacts nearly every one of our clients.
Yes. Have you ever felt buried alive? Have you ever felt alone? Alone. As an owner or a founder, as the classic line of the same song says, till now I always got by on my own. No, stop it. Because today we're going to talk about what the impact is of adding senior leadership or executive leadership to your team, starting with how do you know it's time to add these folks to your team?
Absolutely. And you don't have to be a cowboy riding by yourself on a steel horse with a six string on your back. Oh, there's a line in that. Actually, I was looking at the lyrics, and it's interesting because there's a line. It's the people I meet always go their separate ways, and I think that actually is apropos
Yeah.
to talking about leadership.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, why do we as founders, as owners of B2B businesses, any business really, but B2B professional services business, why do we need to think about leadership? So you have a lot of experience in this, Alyshia. So I wanted to start with a basic question, which is like, what do you see out there? What is the motivator for why somebody should suddenly start worrying about if they have a leadership team or not, and if that leadership team is functional?
Yeah, I know we talk a lot in our work about the value pyramid and it applies in this scenario. So sort of the lowest level is like, I am burned out. I am all done here. We've even talked to people who have contemplated, I'm ready to just sell the business
Oh,
and
that's
move
right.
on, right? Because I've been carrying all this, I'm doing all the work. So that's sort of like your base level red flag is, oh, I'm burning out. I'm not having fun. What I signed up for here, I don't want to do anymore. And then it starts to sort of progress in its maturity of a flag from just help me out to, the clients and the complexity of the work is outgrowing me. And I'm not really sure what to do with that. So maybe clients are asking for things that are not your expertise, that you haven't done yourself, things that are beyond sort of your initial sphere of understanding. And that starts to get this light bulb going, oh, maybe I should have other leaders and other experts in here to do these things that are smart, people that are smarter than me about things that I don't know how to do. And sort of that highest level is a little bit of that mix between reactive and proactive, which is moving beyond sort of the baseline of why you started this thing. So a lot of times when we talk to people, they're like, I wanted to have control over my stuff. I wanted to make a certain amount
Right.
of money. I want to hit a certain dollar
Right.
figure. And you start to go beyond that and think, oh, what am I actually trying to do here? What is the
Hmm.
bigger goal? What is mission, vision, values of this thing? What is the
Right.
greater
Right.
purpose of what I'm doing here? And that's sort of that upper level flag. So I've seen them or a blend of them all along the way,
Hmm.
but usually something in
Hmm.
those realms, especially for a single founder, which is probably impacted the
Hmm.
most. If you have some partners, it can kind of stretch itself a little bit, but eventually everyone hits
Mm.
one of those points where they're like, okay, it's time to start thinking about bringing other people into this fold.
Yeah, for sure. And that's interesting. You should say it in that way because there are some really strong founders out there. I mean, there are folks who can outwork, like legitimately outwork anyone else in their organization or possibly even anyone else they know. I've seen it. I worked for somebody like that.
Yeah.
So you can go a long way, but you eventually hit a wall. And I remember a founder at a past agency that I was in early before I joined. He was saying, we got to a point where I just couldn't put it on my back anymore. That for him, like, so who I would say is like, there are people who can work. And then there's where this fellow was, still is. And he was like, yeah, but there's only 24 hours in a day. I don't have it in the tank anymore. And there was another component to it too, which is interesting. There's like sort of personal productivity. But the other thing that this CEO said too was the machine is too big.
Yes.
In other words, I can't fix it alone. So if something went sideways, it's not like, oh, I can just go out, hustle and sell a couple more things, or, oh, I can't just like land on this one fire and put it out. Like the machine is so big
Yeah.
that if something's skittering sideways, I cannot, there's just not enough bandwidth, capability,
No.
capacity to sort it out. And I think there's some folks that find themselves bouncing between those two different things. Like they're just like maybe burning out. But then also it's big enough that they can't do it, like this physical limitations. And what would you say is like the impact of where we're finding ourselves these days? Like with AI and all these transformations and changes and anything, like everything, like people are tired. I was talking to a founder, and they're like, yeah, I'm grinding, and maybe I'm getting beat.
Yeah. I think the impact of the macro environment is felt probably more so now than any time, at least I know in my career. And it's pace of change. And I think pace of change is even a misnomer. It's just changes all the time. You no longer get
Right.
breaks. There's no longer flights. It's just things are changing all the time. There's sort of the
Yep.
FOMO-esque need to build or to do something because everyone else is doing it, and we don't want to get caught
Hmm.
behind. I also think clients are getting smarter.
Yes.
And I think that the demands that they ask of us as their professional service provider are growing in complexity, and they're
Hmm.
asking for more, and they sort of are coming in at a base level of knowledge that's above what we're used to. And our education of them is more. So you sort of have the demands that the business itself is creating, right? So if we go ripple effect micro to macro, it's like the business itself, if it's chugging along or if it's
Right.
struggling, either way, it's demanding a lot of you as the person with the
Hmm.
buck stops here, and you're the only one. There is no one else buck stops with you. So you have that. And then you have sort of what are the client's environments demanding of you, which is passed through to you. And then you sort of
Right.
have
Right.
the greater environment. You have AI changing things. You've got new companies popping up everywhere. You've got instability in certain sectors that impact what we do, even if we're small providers. And so I think that's accelerating some of those burnout feelings, but it's also accelerating people that are excited about building something that is unique and meets needs, and them understanding quicker that maybe they cannot do that alone, to your point, right? We can only strap things to our back and slide it through
Oh,
the tundra for
absolutely.
so long. And I think as we look through, like, how do you know it's time, right? How do you know it's time to
Yeah.
bring anyone else into your sphere of leadership? Yes, you might get some of those things where you're just like, I can't do this anymore. But I think that complexity factor has grown in its status as a
Oh, sure.
flag, not only because the business might demand it just in your own little micro environment, but the macro
Mhm.
demands we be smarter. The macro demands that we move quicker. The macro demands we be efficient. The macro demands we be better partners. And so that drive is more present, in my opinion, than it ever has been, at least in my
Hmm?
career.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. We feel it. Like our clients are really, really sharp and savvy, and they push us, which is awesome. Like you want
Yeah.
your clients to push you. But as you get bigger, yeah, that's a lot to expect for a founder leader to be able to navigate all of it. That's a
Yeah.
big ask. And to do it continuously, because one of the things that we were talking about was that this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Like we're going to be in
Mm.
this sort of state of change for some time.
Yes.
And that dovetails with this other concept, which I think plays into why it might be time for an executive leader or founder to start thinking about packing out, stubbing out their leadership team. And it's because we like to look for what we do, we like to look for clients who are growing. We like to look for clients who are aspire to something, and it might manifest itself in top line growth, year over year revenue growth, whatever it is. But they aspire to something more.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have always loved thinking about is like it's a very simple question, which is why do companies grow?
Yeah.
Why do they grow? And there's so many answers to that. It's a very, one could think about that as I have for some time, ever
Mhm.
since business school first thought about this. A professor posed this question to us, but where I got to was companies grow to create opportunities for great people.
Yeah.
And that's irrespective of technology or, where we are, the clients or new entrants, whatever. It's like if you want to create opportunities for really, really good people, you got to grow. And so in thinking about that, there is an opportunity there. to sort of step maybe like into your pyramid concept, like
Yeah.
step a little higher in that pyramid, which is like, oh yeah, like, yeah, I'm burning out. Um, but maybe beyond that is like, well, grinding means, running into the burning barn and asking people to follow me. Well, why are they going to follow me? Maybe they'll follow me because they like me. They know that I'm burning out. They know that I'm trying to do too much. So if I say, let's go
Mhm.
back in the burning barn, they'll come with me. But there might come a point where it's like, I love you, Larry, but what's in it for me? Right. And so where is that
Yeah.
higher purpose, sort of higher goal? I know it's something that we work with our clients on a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's cyclical, right? Those two things feed each other. It's like you can't grow without great people, but you have to have great
Yeah.
people to
Yeah.
grow. And I think we both know, it can be scary and challenging to add these first senior leaders to your team, right? You're looking at cost, you're looking at trust, you're looking at turning things
Hmm.
over to other people. But when you take a look at just take a step back and even admitting to yourself, right? First step is admittance that there's a problem that like you might need help, right? You might need help. And we're not downplaying burnout as a cause. It is a cause. It is a reason to take a step back.
Yes.
But when you look at the whole spectrum of things, some of that's just being able to take a step back and saying, I do need help. And that help might not be another body, right? To execute. That
That's right.
that help might not be another person to deliver that work. This
That's right.
might need to be more than that. And we spend a lot of time working with our clients and sort of what do you need to be directly involved in? Or what do you want to be
Mhm.
directly involved in? What do you directly want to know? What are you good at? How do you want to spend your
Mhm.
time? And you often don't feel like you have the chance to do that when you're a single founder or a founder moving really fast. But sort of as part of this identification process is also understanding what you want to be doing, what you want to get out of the business, what
That's
you
right.
want to know about. And let's all again back to our admittance theme. We have them too. There's things that you do in your jobs you don't want to do. That's why it's called
Mhm.
work. But as a founder, because you're in charge, you get to say, like, maybe sales isn't really your thing. You're doing it because you have to. But if other things are piling up, like maybe that's a first area, right? So some of this
That's right.
identification as we look to say, like, sort of if you've gone, okay, I need help, right? I've done the admittance. What are some tips? How do I know? Part of the identification process is saying honestly, but also surgically, what do I want to know
Mhm.
directly? What do I want to be involved in? And what do I want to get out of this? And that's going to open up your eyes and some understanding of like, here's some pieces I don't want to know about, I don't want to be directly involved in, and I don't want to be doing. Those are some of those first places that you can look to identify and find those senior leaders, in addition to subject matter expertise you might not have, or some of those things. But it's also just about your own journey as the owner and
Yeah.
founder. And as the company grows, to your point, giving people those opportunities to step into places and seats that help them grow, but they also help
Mhm.
you as the CEO grow and continue to do what you should be doing. So I think that's one thing as you start to take that step back and identify those areas, it helps you know, yeah, maybe I actually need a higher level person doing this thing and not just another doer that somehow I have to be
Yes.
in charge of. Right. And I know
Oh,
you've
for
seen that as
sure.
well.
For sure. And, one of the things too that we've been chatting about, you and I, is this idea that, you're if you're watching this video, if folks out there are watching this, they're probably sort of thinking about how do I become sort of a higher, ordered version of myself as a leader or whatever. I
Yeah.
care about my team and my people. If you didn't care about those things, you probably wouldn't have made it this far in the
Probably
video.
not.
So right. So assuming that folks are out there, out there are watching this and like, yeah, I think that's me. Watching your people grow could be its own reward.
Mhm.
And well, and that kind of gets to who I choose. What do I
Yes.
let go of? I know for me in the last COO role that I had, that CEO that hired me, and unbeknownst to me, I learned it later,
Yeah.
but they were kept meticulous time, like in harvest or whatever. And he had identified exactly where his time was going, trended out over time. And he saw, in sort of normalized stacked bars, by month, he saw that the things he was really passionate about, exactly to your point, um, were falling.
Yeah.
In particular, R&D, innovation, talking to clients, talking about strategy with clients, and that over time was getting shrunk. And what was emerging in its place were like people in HR issues, policy things,
Mhm.
negotiating things, like dealing with internal financial, like the accounting and all that kind of stuff, or
Yeah.
like legal review of contracts and stuff, all the stuff this person hated, and made that
Yeah.
abundantly clear how much this
Not the
particular
internal operations.
is like it was unmistakable how
Yep.
much that person hated that stuff. But they said, if I can get that time back by hiring somebody to do this stuff for me, I know I could turn that into value and continue growing.
Yeah.
And so that's how they justified it. So, how should people start to think about, all right, fine, get it. I want to grow. That's
Mhm.
cool. What do I let go? Or how do I
Yeah.
begin to think about, where I put my time if I'm not doing X and Y and Z and start all over A, B, C, D, E, and F and the whole thing,
Right.
and how do we identify what holes to fill as a result of that?
Yeah. Well, I feel like a good place to start with that is piggybacking off what you just said, which is there's always someone that loves to do what you hate to do. And it's
Mm.
finding them, right? So you and I are operators. We've worked with a lot of CEOs.
I was like, well, that,
Right, right.
like,
Yeah, I'm like,
actually, that
you're
stuff
like,
you're
that's me.
saying
This is
that I
this is
love
my
doing.
dream job. Thank you so much
I
for
know.
finding me, right? But a lot of times when you work with CEOs, we've talked about this before. They're CEO dash something, right? I'm CEO dash innovator, CEO dash operator,
Right.
CEO dash whatever.
Right.
But there's something after that dash that they're doing today that they're like, oh, if only someone would come along who loved to do this, and I
Mhm.
never had to do this again. And I think it's really starting to sit down and doing a couple of things. One, I think, is if you are one of the what we have found can be rarer executives who keeps your time, it is to do an actual, real, deep in the heart look at that time and be like, where is my time going? And then rank it, right? Rank it by what you think you should be doing and like doing. And what do not qualify as those two things are places you can start to look for other ways for that stuff to get done, right? That could be tool, that could be people, that could be technology, whatever that might be. But
Mhm.
every minute of that time that you get off your plate is a minute you open up to be doing the things you should be doing
Absolutely.
and want to be doing. So a lot of the conversations you and I have had is we work with a lot of CEO innovators and CEO
Mhm.
salespeople. But when
That's
they
right.
might be drugged down in operations, or even if you broke that down into finance or HR or delivery, even every hour they
Yeah.
do that is an hour they don't sell or they don't innovate. And at some point, that plateaus the organization to a point where you can't grow. And then we start down the cycle we were talking about, where you kind of go at the top of the circle and back down. And so it's
Yep.
identifying those things. And then now you find out what solves the problem. And if that problem is
Mhm.
person,
Mhm.
we'll talk about that. I think it's in some later things we chat about how do you find those people. But you truly need to look inside of yourself as the CEO and be like, what is my best and highest use, and how much of that am I doing? And every minute I don't spend doing that, if I could get rid of that to someone else who's good at that, or to something else that's good at that, I open myself up to innovating the next big product for us, to selling the
Yeah.
next big client and hitting those next peaks. And that can feel scary, right? That can feel like, oh, this is more overhead. Oh no, this is more, cost, or no, I have to train this person. But if you don't do it proactively, it will happen to you. And I think it's better to not allow it to happen to you, but you to choose what happens, right?
Yeah, and that gets to opportunity cost. And so for those who are kind of thinking
Yeah.
along those lines, like think about it. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Like every hour you're not spending on the thing, your superlative at, like your superpower, if you will.
Yes.
Um, just think about how expensive that hour actually is if
Time is
innovation
money.
drives business. Time is money.
Time is
That's another thing too. Like if you're the CEO, part of your job, setting vision and all the other stuff is like shifting time and money and one into the other and the other back again,
yes.
including your own. So if innovation drives your business, your agency, or whatever it is that you do, and that's you, and you're not doing that, you're basically throttling the growth of the business. You
Yeah.
you, you are your own the bottleneck of the business, even if there's so many fires, even if there's so many things to get done, if the thing you're really, really good at is not getting as much of your time and attention as possible, you're throttling the business. And we're going to in future versions of these perspectives,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about all sorts of stuff. Oh, I love that Prism Perspectives. We're going to talk about all this kind of stuff because there's who to. Right? Yeah, you're right. You know what, Alyshia, you're right. Now, right, what do I hive off? Who do I give it to? I heard you. It's not about bodies. It can be about technology.
Yeah.
It's like, but where is this going? So, vision, values. Like, I just can't get. I'm thinking about getting to next Thursday, and
Mhm.
I would say some of you might find yourself in that spot. And I've spoken to a few owners who were like, I'm grinding. I'm just trying to get to next Friday. It's like that may be, but I also think it's incumbent upon you as the leader
Yes.
to throw something out there for where the business is going to go. Back to my comment before about like, hey, let's all go in the burning barn. It's like, well, it can't always be because you're burning out. It's got to be become some higher order thing. It could change, right? Like,
Yes.
like our 6 months from now, maybe it's something else, but you need to be able to share with your team or your company, like there's something on over the horizon for us all. And there's a greater thing, and you don't have to be the world's best orator or think always, the big philosophical thoughts, but what is this leading to? If it happens to be to help you make more money, okay, then fine.
Yeah.
There might be a point where that doesn't work, but okay, fine. But if there is something out there for your team, maybe think about exploring what that could be. But I know in the future, in other versions of this Prism Perspectives, we're going to talk about how to identify those folks, how to build out your team, and maybe a little bit about what happens if you have a team. It just might
Yes.
not be the one you need.
Yes.
Not a couple times. And then, okay, now you got your team. How do you set goals for them? How do you lead and manage them? And how do you, grow them as they are on their own professional journeys? And we call this the SLT, Senior Leadership Team, Executive Leadership Team, whatever you want to call it. But that's where you might take this next, I think.
Yeah, I think to your point, there's sort of, you can get to this place by reaction and whatever will come with that, right? You might be like, I don't have a choice. I have to get someone else in here. That's a path. Or you can get to this through proactive, knowing at some point I'm going to need someone else that I trust. And obviously we're big in favor of the latter path, but if you either way, you start with this identification, which is what we're talking about today, is just identifying that I'm going to need someone else, or I do need someone else. And as you said, in future installments here for folks that might be already past that point, we talk about how do you find those people, and then what do you do with them to get them where you need them to be. And to your point, you might already have some of these people. You might have a mix of the two. I've got one of these people, but I need another, or that might be.
Yeah.
And we talk through all those iterations and those steps, but it truly sort of goes in that order, which is, okay, I know I need someone or something who is that, and how do I find them? How do I get them where I need them to be? And when I need more of them, what happens when I already have some of them and now I have to have more of them to the plate? And so please stay tuned for those future installments. But I think, today really our goal was to help you understand when it's time to start thinking about moving to senior leadership beyond yourself, what some of those trigger points are, and trying to do some of that proactive work. And to your point, it's part of your CEO growth path yourself, is to get to that point where you're looking at these things and doing that planning and that real life talk to yourself. And on a regular basis, not necessarily like just when something happens or a fire, but to be checking in on that with yourself, a couple of times a year, and being like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Is my time where it needs to be? Do I have the right people in the right place to support that vision, mission for myself and for the company? So excited to keep talking about this topic in the future. It's a good meaty one that we have to share. And you and I have both been the senior leaders chosen, and we've been the people choosing the senior leaders. So our hope is to give you those perspectives from both sides.
Don't be a cowboy.
That's right.
Or cowgirl.
Don't carry it alone.
Till the next time, this has been Prism Perspectives.
Prism Perspectives. Bye.